Good morning, watchers. Welcome to Brother Sal's Sunday gathering at the storehouse. Glad to be here once again and very happy that you're still listening. In fact, thank you for so many listening to our broadcast from last week. Seems that more and more people are starting to get interested in what we have to say, and we welcome you here to the show. Tony's with me again today, and he's got some very interesting things to say. Good morning, Tone.
Good morning, Dad. Hi. I'm checking out all the media to see what's happening, and it's, it seems something I've noticed is that, for instance, Jordan, it was reported that his pilot got shot down, and they showed footage of him being burned alive. Again, funny how all these things that you would just never do to satisfy terrorists seems to be the new way that we deal with terrorists. We show all of their heinous crimes. We print anything they say. We tell the world exactly what they tell us to tell them. So anyway, let's just assume for a minute that this is real and that they burned this poor guy alive. And then Jordan, Jordan, anybody remember? This was several months ago. ISIS wasn't nearly as strong as they are now. They didn't have nearly as much of Syria as they do now. And, the king of Jordan he had vowed an endless fight against these guys. Endless. And, I keep looking through all these news stories and recommended reads. And, there's not one string of storyline, of narrative that continues along what's Jordan doing? What came of all this? Don't you remember he was in every paper? He was on the cover of every magazine in his military garb. There was even the rumor that he was out there, leading the charge, which of course was not true. These sorties that the fighters went and bombed ISIS. He was at home in the palace. But, it was all the rave. Just like, 9/11 was all the rave for a moment. And I remember telling you, Dad, back then that if this is real, if these terrorists just manage to fly planes into buildings and pull off this kind of terrorist act, well, how hard is it going to be to just blow up a supermarket or a school or a daycare center or a bridge? Anything of low security at that point. If they could get in and do that, how could you possibly stop them? And if you remember, the story was, this was an all-out jihad. This was it. They were going to fight to the death. The war was on. That's how we presented it. If you go back and look at the papers and the way people were writing about it, it was absolutely detrimental that we do something about this. And so it's just interesting to me how it's like this, 15 minutes of fame kind of idea. As long as they distract us for just a few minutes with today's story, we forget about it tomorrow. Because tomorrow there's a new drama. There's a new hype. And nobody bothers to really pay attention to the fact that the same people hyping all this stuff have been hyping the same stuff ever since TV was invented, ever since radio was invented. There was War of the Worlds. There's been an ice age that was coming to scare everybody about climate change. There was the Russian invasion that was coming to scare everybody about the communists. It's never changed. We're not living in a moment that's any different, except that the things that do get done over that time. For instance, we never did go to war with Russia in all those years. But what did we do? What did get done over those decades that we were putting money into a military and talking about the Cold War with Russia? Well, one of the interesting things that got done is that we managed to build, by today anyway, 1,400 military bases throughout the world. 1,400 in 120 countries. Nobody can touch that. Russia's got no 1,400 military. They don't have bases in other countries. We do. Only we do. Only we have that. That's been going on all this time. the security of the petrodollar and the complete destruction of any rival financial system took place, over the Cold War. While we were all worried about Russia going to war, what they were doing is dismantling and destroying, turning America into a corporation, or at least living out the dream of what had been done a generation before in turning it into a corporation. So I think it's important to remember that, the news is always sensationalized as if it's the last day it will ever be that way. But it's funny that we just don't seem to remember that it was sensationalized that way yesterday about all the stories that were there yesterday and the day before and the day before and the year before and every day. That's what they do. That's how they sell their magazines. They keep sensationalizing the events of the day. So what you have to do is really, what are really the events of the day? And I want to start with Russia today, because of course today we have the crisis in Syria, we have this refugee crisis, we have the rise of ISIS and this threat of terrorism, and then we have now, you could include China and Russia in this whole competitive alliance that seems to be taking form that nobody ever talked about. I mean, in my lifetime, Russia, as I say, 20 years ago, we drove Russia broke. Russia was the demon in my young life. But then as I became a man and into my formidable years, we defeated Russia. Russia was dead. As far as we were told, the oligarchs looted Russia. They were starving to death over there and freezing in the winters because they couldn't even pay for the gas that comes out of their own ground. I mean, right? Didn't it go back? Isn't that what we were told 20 years ago, 25 years ago? So as I've been trying to, what I see is one of the key issues that nobody's talking about is, why do we think Russia is such a big competition? What made Russia so competitive to America that all of a sudden Russia is a formidable foe? Who are these guys? Oh, Russia. I mean, why? Because we put it in the papers that way. Because we talk about Russia. Ooh, bad Russia. Aggressive Russia. Just like we've been talking about Iran. But, Iran hasn't invaded another country for like 200 since the 1700s. Right? Only we invade other countries. We talk about Iran. We talk about Saddam Hussein, but then we hung him. And we invaded his country, if you remember, based on a lie. All of our top respectable people sat in our top respectable chairs of state and lied their face off to the American people to get us into a war that's still going on. And yet all the lies that keep going just keep piling on. We don't bother to unravel it back to that lie and say, wait a minute, who are those buggers and why did they lie about that? And why would we believe anything else that's come out of their face since then? And yet here we are almost 15 years later, the whole world about to go to war, and the news is just reporting it like it's all happening today. Nobody remembers what happened yesterday. Nobody talks about the fact that Russia was nothing 20 years ago. We're the ones with 1,400 bases around the world. Who are they to do anything? Who are they to? Like Iran, we put sanctions on these people. Why are we worried about Russia? What can they do? So the first article I have here, and this is out of, I don't know where they get this stuff anymore. This is out of Yahoo News. So, I mean, just, Associated Press, I suppose. This is just your standard propaganda. You go to your propaganda catalog to order your propaganda, So this is from the propaganda catalog, Yahoo News, and and this is from September 24th. Okay, so this is just on Friday. On Thursday. Obama agrees to meet Putin after, quote, repeated requests. So they're This article is going to paint the U.S. as the superior power, funny enough, and Putin is making these requests to come to us, and Obama's gonna give them a pass here after 2 years of putting them on ice with these sanctions, and they've made repeated requests for a meeting, and so now, Obama's gonna, what are the words that are used here now? A senior U.S. official told AFP Obama decided it would be, quote, irresponsible not to test whether Russia is ready to play a more constructive role, right? I mean, does that sound like someone who's our equal in the world and that we have to respect on a military level? They don't put sanctions on us, we put sanctions on them. We don't request a meeting with Putin. Putin apparently requests a meeting with America. Putin tells his people that they're going to talk about Syria. We tell our people, I want to find the quote here so people can see the way we present Russia on one hand. The announcement was also followed by conflicting messages from Moscow and Washington on what the meeting would focus on. Naturally, the top priority topic will be Syria, Kremlin spokesman confirmed to Russian news wires. The two leaders would also touch on the conflict in Ukraine, quote, if there is time left. The White House said the talks would be focused on Ukraine and Russia's commitment to withdraw troops from the eastern part of the country. The president this is a quote now, the president has made clear that he's prepared to waive those sanctions as soon as Russia is prepared to demonstrate commitment to complying with the agreements that were reached in Minsk. Of course, this is all such wag the dog, horse manure as we've gone over. The people of Crimea, the people of Ukraine are Russians. They said, no, we see the writing on the wall. We don't want to be a puppet government and be part of the UN. We want to go with Russia. We're Russian. We want to be part of the Russian, political system. And so they held elections and they voted to stay with Russia. So we went in there, had a coup, a military coup, kicked the elected president out. We got Poroshenko in there, and now Poroshenko, of course, he's all for the UN, and we got civil war in Ukraine. But of course, Russia's the aggressor, not America. Russia's the aggressor. So, anyway, what I find more important than that here, this is what really tells. These are just some of the. These all give it. These are for taking the temperature again. They asked for the meeting. They're the ones with the sanctions, not the other way around. They're the ones that are saying, yeah, we're going to talk about Syria, and we're saying, no, we're going to tell them about how, we might lift these sanctions if you get your buns out of Ukraine like we told, you be a good boy and do what you're told. Right? Isn't that the way they're framing? This is our White House spokesman. So now listen to this. After a senior U.S. official told this Associated Press Obama decided it would be, quote, irresponsible not to test whether Russia is ready to play a more constructive role. Russia is a protagonist in the crises in Ukraine and Syria. See, they're a protagonist, not us. Ukraine had free elections. They voted to go with Russia. We went in with our man, Poroshenko. That's proven. This was not a popular uprising. This was an American CIA coup. So who's the protagonist? And then in Syria, as we discussed last week, Russia is Syria's ally. They have every right to be in there helping Syria. Israel, America, everybody else who's in there bombing in Syria have not been invited in to help with ISIS. They have no right to be in there, even if they are funding the rebels that are fighting Assad. That still doesn't give them a right to be in there in Assad's country. It's still Assad's country till the rebels take over. And yet Russia has a right to be in there. So Russia's a protagonist in crises in Ukraine and Syria where Moscow props up the regime of Bashar al-Assad. You mean like we prop up the regimes of Jordan or Saudi Arabia or Egypt, right? Or Israel? Why? What's so protagonist, or what problem do we have with Russia supporting its ally in the same way we support ally? Why are they an aggressor or a protagonist, and we're simply what, defending freedom or some outrage? Okay, so Russia's being painted as this. They're the protagonists. They're behind Ukraine and Syria, where Moscow's, being responsible for Assad. While saying Obama would not show, quote, overt hostility, Earnest went on to describe this. Earnest is the White House spokesman, Josh Earnest. Earnest went on to describe Russia as a regional power with an economy that was slightly smaller than Spain's, in comments sure to rile Putin and the Kremlin. Really? An economy slightly smaller than Spain's has a military capacity slightly larger than the United States of America and NATO, huh? Isn't that interesting? I mean, go to your articles, you guys. Look how they paint the Russian military for us. They want us to know their planes are better than our planes. They want us to know these guys got more sophisticated equipment than we do. They want us to know the Russian military is every match for our military. And so I just keep wondering, how is it possible that a country that has an economy slightly smaller than Spain's has managed to build a military equal to the United States, that we fear their military capacity? Where did they get the money? 20 years ago, they were worse off than Spain. Today, Spain is broke, and there aren't sanctions against Spain. Spain's getting all sorts of quantitative easing and IMF help, right? Spain's getting all sorts of loans to keep them afloat. Russia, it just says in this article, has crippling sanctions leveled against it. Quote, the decision to hold talks checks a U.S. policy of punishing Putin for his invasion of Ukraine. See, he invaded Ukraine, not us. A stance that also brought international sanctions that have crippled the Russian economy. So, I mean, is their crippled economy stronger than our economy in the Great Recession, in which we're at war in all these countries? We maintain 1,400 military bases around the world, right? We don't speak of our own economy as crippled. I mean, is his crippled? Is that just a way we say it? But what we mean is his crippled economy really is 10 times as rich as our economy in recession? I don't get it. He's in sanctions for 2 years so that his economy is crippled. His economy is slightly smaller than Spain's. 20 years ago, the whole country was completely looted by oligarchs. I'm just, where'd they get this military? Who funded that? How are they now in position to threaten the United States and NATO? Okay, to me, these are the questions that no one bothers to ask, but they seem simple enough on the surface, given that we keep hearing both sides of this irreconcilable coin. On one side, they have this amazing military that even outshines our own. And on the other side, they're being crippled by economic sanctions. They have to ask for a meeting with us that we don't even give them for 2 years. Their economy is smaller than Spain's. What kind of war could these guys sustain against us? So anyway, this is what this is the part that lets you know there's a deeper who's funding them. That must be who we got to really talk about. Who's loaning them the money with no credit, a tiny economy, and willing to give them a military capacity that they obviously can't pay back? If we can't pay for our military with the size of our economy, with no sanctions, with the petrodollar ruling the world, How is it that an economy smaller than Spain's that was broke 20 years ago, that's had sanctions for 10% of that time, crippling its economy, where are they getting all the money for the weapons? Okay? So, and I guess the last thing, that's all from that article. Simply that it exposes what the other articles on Russia that try and paint them as this superpower that we're afraid of. If we are, then why does our president just snub? Why do they make remarks like that? Like we just snubbed these people. We didn't do that during the Cold War. I mean, everything had to be very calculated because we were told how dangerous it was. Any maniac could push a button and we've got nuclear war. Well, now they're telling us that, and yet Obama talks about, it would be irresponsible not to test. See if he's ready to be a good boy. I mean, does that sound like someone that has the power that we present in the other? Anyway, here's another article from, I guess these are all now APF. That's some sort of Associated Free Press, I suppose. As if add insult to injury. Okay, so this is more Associated Free Press garbage. West reaches out to Iran as Syria strategy stumbles. And this is just from yesterday, Saturday. U.S. and Western diplomats scrambled on Saturday to cobble together a diplomatic strategy to end the war in Syria after the latest humiliating blow to their military plan. I mean, humiliate that you weren't prepared for the fact that Syria is going to ask their ally Russia to step up, and Russia probably is going to, step up and send them some gear. That's going to be a humiliating. That was our military plan. Oh, darn it. Russia stepped up. Oh, how humiliating. I mean, really, this is, yeah, okay. We're really paying a lot for this military, aren't we? Secretary of State John Kerry and his European counterparts reached out to traditional foe Iran on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York. I mean, reached out to Iran. You mean the people they were just threatening a month ago to send into the Stone Age? We just read last week, Hillary Clinton, I'll bomb them. I'll bomb them. Hey, give me an excuse, I'll bomb them. Right? So we're reaching out to these people. I mean, I wonder, do we think they're as stupid as we are? Our public that would believe this kind of stuff? Does our public think that Iranians are as stupid as Americans? That they would consider reaching out from the Americans anything but, I mean, I can't even believe they present this to my intellect, these conflicting stories. Now we're reaching out to Iran as if what? We've just been talking about Iran as if they can't be trusted. As if they've been working on nuclear weapons behind our backs all these years, and this could bring us to war if they don't do what they're told. But we're reaching out to this person who we don't trust enough that we have sanctions. It's like saying we're reaching out to Russia. You mean the people we've had sanctions with for 2 years? Geez, I wonder how they're going to respond to us reaching out to them. Oh, boy. Iran and Russia back Syrian strongman Bashar al-Assad, not Syrian elected president. 2 elections, last 2 elections they've had in Syria, which nobody was able to undermine as being anything but, every bit as quote unquote free as our own elections, whatever that means. He was elected. What makes him any more of a strong man than Cameron in England or Obama in America, whom Washington sees as the instigator of the civil war that left half his country in the hands of the Islamic State group. So now, remember now, Bashar al-Assad, his father ruled Syria. These are people that have ruled Syria for like 4 decades. So he's the instigator of a civil war that nobody heard about. It just happened, right? But he instigated it. And that left it in the hands of the Islamic State group, who the whole world seems to know is the CIA-backed, Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, same thing as the CIA-funded rebels. And so, it couldn't be that all of our Arab Spring resulted in all of this civil war. It couldn't be that ever since we coincidentally got involved in this Arab Spring wonderful popular color uprisings in the Middle East, that all of this stuff really started to happen, didn't it? These places were relatively stable. It can be shown in history that it's our sanctions, not first our guns, our chemical weapons that we gave to Saddam Hussein, and whether we told him to use them on the Iranians or not, we didn't do anything when it was shown that he did use them on the Iran. We just sort of, geez, what can you do? Yeah, well, what can you do? You see what you can do. You can take people out. You can say you can't do that. So you have to imagine that since they didn't, he knew that it was okay with the people who made the chemical weapons. Yeah, let's go try that on those Iranians and see what you can do. And so, and then of course sanctions resulted for 8 years in the killing of millions of people in Iran, 500,000 children, and just one of the great war crimes of modern history. Saddam wasn't really responsible for that. He was our guy all along. We could have taken him out at any point, just like we finally did. Took him and his army right out of the picture. That was always within our grasp. But as Cheney said in '94, responding to should we have finished the job and gone to Baghdad when Bush Sr. invaded him, and he said no, we shouldn't, because we would have just invaded the country, took it over, and then what do you put in the place of Saddam Hussein? And so, of course, that's what we wound up. That's exactly the quagmire, to use his words, that we foresaw, and it's what we now bring about. And so for us to talk about whom Washington sees as the instigator of civil war, when for 20 years we knew that our sort of ambitions in that region and the military campaigns that it was going to take was going to result in all of these things. So I not that anyone's going to report that, but for the people listening, I want you to, get a grip. Don't read these articles like they're telling you the truth. No, they're using whatever truth might exist to tell you a story. Okay? So here, of course, the story: Russian aggression, Syrian strongman who's responsible. You're going to find out here they're saying for I've read two things now: 350 deaths and 250 deaths. So think of that. No one was taught, all those years that I remember Saddam Hussein being under sanctions and all the deaths. I don't remember people reporting Assad having all this death in his country, all these problems. Nobody was reporting that. I don't recall any of those problems. When did those problems start? Well, funny enough, a few years ago when America got involved. All of this Arab Spring, all of this BS. And all of a sudden now, you've got 250,000 people in that country dead, and we're going to blame him, the guy that's been there the whole time, who up until this coincidental time has not had 250,000 people dead in his country. But suddenly, after U.S. involvement, the whole Middle East is destabilized, just as they knew it would be. ISIS is supported by America, and Russia is painted as this great aggressor, even though their economy is smaller than Spain's. Iran, our enemy, we're having to reach out to. I mean, what is this? What kind of wag the dog world are they painting for us? What is this peace process? What kind of peace process takes 250,000 people to kill in a civil war? Right? That wasn't going on before our peace process got involved. Unwilling to countenance a peace process that would leave Assad in power after he alienated or killed so many of his people, the U.S. has backed small, moderate rebel groups. Right? Unwilling to countenance a peace process. In other words, we can't go ahead with this wonderful peace process that we're involved in here. Since all we do is send money and weapons to that region. All we do is fund terrorists in that region. This is our peace process. But we're unwilling to countenance a peace process that would leave Assad in power after he alienated or killed so many of his people. I mean, Are you kidding me? That is really the U.S. litmus test? Right? That's our litmus test, huh? But we don't do anything about any of the poor countries in the world who have leaders that alienate or kill so many of their people. Right? No. We only go after the, like for instance, the Saudi regime, right? Or China. What did they do in Nepal to those poor people, right? But are we unwilling to countenance a trade process and leave someone like whoever was in charge of China in power? No, we never bring up any of that. So please, come on. Anyone who's still pretending this is about terrorist dictators, we are the terrorist dictator. So anyway, but that strategy appeared in tatters on Saturday after the Pentagon admitted the latest U.S.-trained fighters to cross into Syria had given a quarter of their gear to Al-Qaeda. I mean, we are just a real crack military, aren't we, after all this time of ruling the world? Our strategy appears in tatters. Well, what happened? You mean Russia started sending some equipment to Syria? We never anticipated that. And so now we're both humiliated and our strategy is in tatters. And you find out that this the strategy that's in tatters, the Pentagon admitted the latest U.S.-trained fighters to cross into Syria had given a quarter of their gear to Al-Qaeda. Wow, okay, they gave it to them. You would think at gunpoint, I hope they just didn't walk over and say, here, take our gear. I mean, boy, we're doing a hell of a training job then, aren't we? And then the next sentence, a previous 54-strong group that crossed into Syria earlier, 54. Like, when I went to my first family reunion when I was a kid, there was 94 people come out of 2 people. My grandparents had 94 people related to them, 40 years or 50 years later. We sent 54 strong group that crossed into Syria earlier this year was attacked by Al-Qaeda's local franchise, the Al-Nusra Front. Just the Al-Nusra Front, you figure, has got to be more than 54 people, right? How can you call a group a front if there's less than 54 people? And fell apart, leaving only 4 or 5 guerrillas active. Huh? So these are the strategies that aren't working. We sent 54 people into Syria earlier this year. A 54-strong group that crossed into Syria earlier this year was attacked. Well, I mean, I suppose we knew they would be attacked, right? We weren't sending the 54 of them in there to do surveying, probably. So 54-strong group. I guess they don't say these were, leaving only 4 or 5 guerrillas. Maybe they're talking about actual chimpanzees. We sent 54 chimpanzees over there, and only 4 or 5 of them made it. So, I mean, I don't know. This, to me, this is our strategy for taking on Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra and ISIS and the horrible Bashar al-Assad, who's killed quarter of a million people have died. We sent 54 people earlier this year, and geez, it's just not working. Our strategy. 50 of them got attacked. Does that mean 50 of them got killed, leaving only 4 or 5 guerrillas active? Did they get captured? Is this journalism? What happened? Who are these 54? A previous 54 strong group. I mean, of what? Marines? Chimpanzees? Troubadours? What kind of... this is just... For me, it's very frustrating after all these years, because when I'm talking to people, this is the garbage that's in their head that they're trying to refute my information or my insight with. In contrast to the lackluster U.S. effort to shore up its allies on the ground, Russia and Iran have proven good friends to Assad, who clings to power in Damascus. Again, U.S. lackluster, of course, because we couldn't see any of this coming. We're just playing catch up. After all, we're only the United States of America with 1,400 bases around the world. We only spend more on military than the rest of the world combined. So yeah, why shouldn't our effort be lackluster compared to Russia, who has an economy smaller than Spain's, and Iran, who doesn't even have a single nuclear weapon? Next line. Iran has dispatched Shiite militia fighters trained and helped by its Revolutionary Guard, and Russia has deployed a powerful military presence to a base on Assad's territory. With the initiative falling away, Kerry and his allies came to New York hoping to persuade Tehran and Moscow to push for a broad political solution to the conflict. So, let me see if I get this straight. The people who we currently have sanctions against, who we call our enemies every day in our press, who we paint as threats to our very way of life, since our own lackluster performance with our 54 strong group that we sent didn't work, are backing these moderate groups, as they said, that unwilling to countenance a peace process that would leave Assad after he's killed so many people. The U.S. has backed small, moderate rebel groups. What's a moderate rebel group? Do they only fire like 10 bullets and then they go home? Or do they only use rubber bullets? Or they only kill people with a sword and they only use hand-to-hand? What's a moderate rebel? Are they not trying to kill the Assad regime people? Are they not trying to kill the other side and establish their own regime? What are these words we use in our absurd media? Moderate rebels. What's a moderate rebel? When we were having our rebellion against England in our war of independence, were any of us moderate rebels against England, or were we absolutely committed, fanatical rebels against England? In other words, we have no taste for England at all. We're not moderate. We're completely anti-England. We're absolutely rebellious. What's a moderate rebel? What garbage? So we backed a few moderate rebels. We sent 54 people across, but darn it, well, we didn't expect our enemies, Russia and Iran, Syria's two biggest allies, to help. Oh, darn it. Well, now we're really screwed up. We don't know what to do. We're going to have to talk to Russia and Iran and see if they'll help us. Is that what I'm reading? Is Iran and Russia, are they either playing this with us like a big charade, or laughing, or crying they're laughing so hard at American non-intelligence? So, the French envoy, they're all just, these negotiations cannot start from the premise that Bashar al-Assad will be Syria's eternal future. Eternal. Another great word for this genius to use. What leader of a country is there eternally? But we must engage negotiation. These idiots are saying, well, okay, we can talk. We can start talking even though he's still there, but everybody's got to agree he's going. Well, wait a minute. He don't have to agree he's going. And the people that are his allies don't have to agree that he's going. Why would they? Right? But what we're going to find out is to keep from going to war with NATO. That's why. That's why. Because that's what's coming. And so they're setting us up for that, to make it look like there's nothing that can be done because, these aggressors, Russia and Iran and Syria, who's killed so many people. The French envoy said he was prepared to talk about Syria without preconditions, but insisted Assad, whom he blamed for 80% of the 240,000 deaths in the war, would eventually have to go. So, it's just so interesting that, what about all the countries that are saying Obama has to go? I guess they don't have a voice, right? Why? Well, they don't have a military. So what do we care about what Russia or Iran has to say? That's the whole point. Unless things are being orchestrated, how hard would it be for America to have their way? We got our way in Cuba, didn't we? When things sure seemed like Russia was they were being painted that Russia was a lot more of our contemporary nemesis than today. I mean, it's happened all of a sudden again, but I want to point out that, go back 20 years and tell me that 20 years ago you could have said, oh, in 20 years Russia will be stronger than the U.S. militarily. You would have had to laugh. How? Where will they get the money? Who will loan them the money? Who? Who's got the money to build another military when America spends all of its citizens' money? America, the richest country that steals the wealth of the world through its petrodollar scam, through its international monetary system scam, banking fraud, steals the wealth of the world, and yet all we do is our debt never stops because we have to keep building this gargantuan military, and we spend more than the rest of the world combined. How is it that Russia suddenly has an equal military? I mean, I'm going to keep asking that question till somebody answers, because everyone hides from that. I've written it to some of these alternative news people who love to just keep fear porning everyone. World War III. Russia put troops over here. China's gonna break the dollar. China's buying all the gold. All this fear mongering. Yeah. Where was China 50 years ago, 40 years ago when World War II was over? Huh? Where were these people? Where did they get their political system from? Who funded it? Who's behind these countries? Would anybody care to notice that it's the Rothschild banking interest that's behind all of them? So, yeah, who's pulling the strings for what reason? Right? And that's the deeper thing that I hope that people can get from our discussions, is the view that the eschatological view, that this has all got to do now with this final conflagration that has been planned for a long time. Why has it been planned? Because it's all been about getting that land that we call the Middle East into secure hands, which it isn't yet. And to do that has taken a 100-year plan and 3 wars that were laid out, because there were 3 separate groups of people that had to be warred against. The Orthodox Christians, the Orthodox Jews, and the Orthodox Muslims, or pretty much all of the Muslims to begin with, because that's their land. The Palestinians, the Arabs, the people who rightfully live on that land. How far can you expand without running into, a counterculture? See, is Israel's position. They can't really expand over there because the land's already occupied by the people that have been there for millennia. So the only answer is a genocidal destruction of the people of that land, and then a rebuilding of that land without so many people, able to carve up new borders now and say, okay, you guys, just like we did with the Native Americans, right? We just marched across that world and slaughtered them, and then made deals with who was left and said, okay, here's your reservation. Oh yeah, we love you guys. We respect you. You can do anything you want over here on this useless piece of dirt. And by the way, we'll be dumping our toxic waste, here adjacent to your land. So, that's what appears to be coming. And if it wasn't for, how could we know that? Well, that would only be more speculation like everybody else. But we have the prophecies. We have Daniel. We have Revelation. So we know what's coming. We know that they're looking to set up a temple again. The Jews are already claiming that. This isn't a secret. The Jewish state wants their temple again. We know the Jordanian king, the Hashemite king, years ago, he negotiated with the Jews to build a 5th minaret up on the Temple Mount. We know the Jews have been working for years on all the implements for their temple, so that they're literally ready to get back to it. Throw that prefabricated temple up as in the days of Solomon, and get back to their sacrifices. They've even got the red heifers, right? They have all the implements, supposedly, ready to go for the temple. Well, why is that? Because it's 1,000 years away? Well, no, they imagine it's close. And I'm going to go further now in everything I've learned to, my opinion is coming more to the side that they have been orchestrating all this for 100 years. They, meaning the bankers whose money has been funneling into the Middle East. Meaning that they've been rising up the person that at the end time is going to be their deliverer. They know who it's going to be. They're not waiting for some Messiah to come out of heaven. That's for the fools. That's for the myth makers and the religious. But the Talmudic, vicious, avaricious, heathen demons that run the state of Israel, they're after slaughtering their neighbors for God. Right? This is the God that they worship. A God that wants them to genocidally kill everybody so that they can rule the world. And so whether they have been pulling the strings to actually make that happen at the throw of a switch, or whether they're simply trying to create all the conditions by which, see, again, it presupposes then that they believe in a supernatural Messiah. But that can't possibly be, because they live their life. We know that they believe in a military application of God's rule, right? The Talmud's not about following God. It's not about turning the other cheek or loving your neighbor. It's about occupy. It's about, as we said last week, through deception thou will do war. You will do war through deception. And so, that's what the state of Israel is. That's the point of and if you tie that into prophecy, well, that makes sense as something more than just some sort of speculation that's unfounded. What's the foundation of that? Well, as I say, go back 100 years, the Balfour Declaration. Why is this Christian nation so attached to this Jewish nation who can't wait to find a Messiah other than Jesus? What's the attachment there? See? So they've invented one. They've invented this attachment. But the real attachment is with the Muslims. The Muslims are the ones that are waiting for Jesus to come. The Muslims are the ones that know that Jesus is the true Messiah of the Jews. The Muslims are the ones that know that Jesus will eventually rule the world. Yes. That's not... I'm going to try and get to an article today where they don't tell us that, because they don't represent Islam correctly, just like they don't represent Christianity correctly. Why would they? Otherwise the world might be on the right, on the right path. But obviously we're not. So I'm just trying to point out that it doesn't make sense to see the world the way they're presenting it to us. We've known the bankers have been after that land for 100 years. They planned World War I. You can see it in history now. You can see how they did it, why they did it, and what they did. You can see the Bolshevik Revolution, who started it. Karl Marx was a Jew, okay? These guys were all Jews. These were all Ashkenazi European Jews sent there to destroy Christianity. That's what Bolshevism and communism was all about, and they carried it on for 80 years and essentially genocidally murdered and destroyed Christianity in Russia, because that's the home of Orthodox Christianity after the Muslims drove it out of Constantinople in 400. So if you begin to look at that bigger picture of the money funding all of this, funding Russia now to come into Syria, funding America to keep blundering its way into this war, never actually putting the right foot forward, never spending the money on the right people and doing the right thing, right? So, and again, this isn't just, why aren't we? Because, again, the plan isn't what we're presenting. We're not. The peace process is a war process. Just like the Affordable Health Care Act is 5 times as expensive as the old one. Just like the free market society is the most is the most closed market in the world. Just like, free elections are actually absolutely the most closed elections in the world. We're given our puppets that we're told, we're free to vote for. So all of these ridiculous things in America need to be seen for what they are. The peace process has been a war process for many years. What is that war process about? It isn't about overthrowing Muslims, I promise you. Not because they're Muslim. That's not the problem. It could easily be shown what the Muslim religion really is. It could easily be shown that this is respected and that everything else, like with the Christians that shoot abortion doctors, is unacceptable in everybody's culture. Muslims don't accept those kind of Muslims either. So terrorism isn't a Muslim thing at all. It's actually a Jewish thing. It's a Judaic cultural imperative to terrorize their enemies and their neighbors, not the Muslims at all. And so all of these things that's being painted for us are completely backwards. And so if you could stand back for a minute to understand why, and just imagine that what you're looking at is this banking interest that's going to seize the opportunity that God said, or the scriptures say, that eventually I'll bring those people back to that land and I will rule over them, and the Messiah will come and rule forever. Okay? So imagine you seize upon that and say, you know what? We're Jews. We converted to Judaism. We're going to make that happen with all our money and all our influence. We're going to start repatriating the land, because certainly that can't happen unless we're back in the land. So we're going to start going back to the land. We're going to put money up to go back to the land. We're going to get back there so that God can come, right? Now that would all be nothing wrong with that. And in fact, the Muslims would have absolutely accepted the Jews back in the land as returning to the land, as they did when the Jews started to return. The Muslims had no problem with that. The problem is that the Jews start saying, but now wait a minute, this land is ours. Whoa, wait a minute, friend. You just returned after 2,000 years from Russia, from Germany, from Poland, from all these... What do you mean the land is yours? What makes it yours? My family's been living here since before they had history in this area. So now you got the conflict. And if you look at it, what has happened in that conflict? Has it been a godly, sort of peaceful... has anyone on the side of the Judaic Zionist movement sought a peaceful solution? Not at all. Not at all. It's been terrorism from day one. It's been absolute barbarous terrorism and overpowering authority. Because, of course, the Arabs didn't have the guns that England had when they first came into that territory. And then now, they don't have the guns that America has. Iran doesn't have nuclear weapon number one. Iran's never invaded another country. Okay? Israel's got nuclear weapons and started invading its neighbors from the moment it landed in the land. It's done nothing but expand its territories from the moment it landed in that land. And when you look at their whole Zionistic premise, well, you see why. It's their vision. And their vision's the one that includes, through deception, thou will make war. So, I mean, now put all that into perspective. So how do they make war? Well, they demonize the Muslims around them and say that they're the ones that want to kill everybody. They're the ones that want to spread their religion through terror. And then, of course, you pull off false flag terror events and you blame it on them. Now, again, who is the force in the world that has the money, the motive, the means, and the history of doing such a thing? Is it the Arabs? No! It's the English and the Americans and the Israelis. They're the espionage workers of the world, not the Arabs. They come out of being nomads and, right, living in tents in the desert and such. They're not known as the espionage people of the world. England, America, Israel. These are the people that work their underhanded military false flag, espionage kind of pursuit of historical gain. So if you put it into that perspective, it starts to look like something here where everybody's being pulled out of their pieces, pulled out of their places like pieces on a giant, war game board for the right reason. And I've been saying, and I feel that it's only becoming easier for me to confirm, that it's the reason for it all is to continue to put this pressure on the what we'll call the Western world, the NATO world that supports Israel, that our way of life is truly threatened by this, what's going on. And see, it still isn't yet. It's still the seeds being planted. But the way of life, they can't pitch that just yet. And that's why I think this whole thing with Russia right now and Iran is being brought out. It's time to raise the level raise the fever pitch just a little by presenting a larger conundrum. Ooh, Russia's in the region. Ooh, well, now it's not just as simple as we help fund some of the moderate rebels to take out this horrible dictator in the most humane way we know how. Oh, no, well, now what do? We're asking Russia, get out of the way. See, so what do you need now? Okay, now they're all trying to say, hey, let's calm down. Okay, we can talk with Assad still in there as long as everyone realizes that he can't stay in there, right? So they're all making this posture suddenly like nobody's going to lose their heads over it, okay? So what I see from that is it's going to allow everybody to keep putting their guns in position and fortifying all their positions. And then what's going to happen is a false flag where somebody gets blamed, right? Something blew up and Russia's denying it, but they're helping Assad. And now that's it, Russia. You get out of there or we can't be responsible for what happens. You see what I mean? So all of a sudden it's not, nobody planned on it. Just like all of this stuff, nothing's foreseen. Nobody foresees anything, but I'm foreseeing something. I'm foreseeing that NATO and Russia have to come into a conflict, that Israel has to feel more threatened, that Western Europe has to feel more threatened, so that they're ready to, this divide in the people, this divide and conquer mentality that I believe is going on right now of even the Europeans and Americans. They can't have them all thinking straight. Everybody's got to be on a different side of the issue, yelling across the table at each other. And so proof of that to me is still in the papers with the latest from the Huffington Post on Hungary with Viktor Orban. And this is from the 23rd, just a few days ago, from the Huffington Post. And the title is How Hungary's Viktor Orban Became the Villain of Europe's Refugee Crisis. And of course, as I've been saying, it seems to me they're using him to play the hard line, because I'm sorry, but Viktor Orban is not in charge of Hungary. I love how these mouthpieces talk as if Obama decided to put sanctions on Russia. Really? You mean it's up to Obama whether the whole country of Russia starves or not? There's no checks and balances there. Congress, the American people, don't have to decide on sanctions. Obama just decides to levy sanctions on another country or lift them or bomb another country. Or Hungary's Viktor Orban, he just decides for the whole country of Hungary. Now here's what we're doing. Bull. I'm sorry. Who got Viktor? Who supports Viktor in Hungary? You mean he's a politician that has no support? People don't put millions of forints into his political campaign so that he can stay popular and buy the newspapers. And come on, who supports him? Those are the people calling the shots. What banks loan him the money? Even if it's not the IMF. Whatever banks do loan him the money, that's who's calling the shots on Hungary. Not Viktor Orban, like he's a king or a sovereign and everybody just bows to him. What he says goes. Come on. You don't think he's consulting someone that says, Victor, here's what I think we need to do. You need to tell them we're going to put a fence. We're not letting people in. We're playing the hard line. You tell them no. You think that's Victor's decision, huh? And not some group of people who have influence over Victor's decisions. Just like the group of people who have influence over Obama's decisions, right? So, read the deeper thing. Who is it that's playing Viktor Orban this way? Who is it that wants Hungary? Because this article wants to pretend that most of Hungary is with this guy. Whereas my friend in Hungary tells me that the people of Hungary seem quite divided. I don't know if the divide is, 50-50 or whatever. But it's funny because they point out how tens of thousands of Hungarians gathered in Budapest to demonstrate against Orban's government in 2012, chanting "Victator" and protesting the new amendments. But his administration survived. Yeah, he put he consolidated state power once he took over, or some years ago, whatever, after 2010, when whoever bought his ticket put him in power, and he started consolidating state power, taking over courts and the media. I don't know what made him so popular. They show this picture here, tens of thousands of Hungarians in Budapest to protest this guy's change to their constitution, right? But now they're trying to present as most of the country is with him in turning away these refugees. And I find this interesting. Again, they talk about hundreds of thousands of refugees that have passed through so far, right? Isn't that the figure we all hear? Okay, so this isn't I'm seeing now, this isn't Associated Press, this is Agency France Press. So this is a French press, these AFP articles that I've been getting through Yahoo. Not that any of that matters, they all get their news from the same mouthpieces. But now here's a chart in here that shows the distribution in Europe of the 66,000 refugees as of September 22nd, 2015, coming from Italy and Greece. So this is all the way up to date, pretty much 66,000. So I don't know where these millions that are going to change the face of Europe. Anyway, so and then they've got a breakdown of the distribution that's suggested, perhaps. Germany 17,000, France 13,000, Spain 8,000. Poland 5,000, Netherlands 4,000, Romania 2,500. I mean, yeah, that's it. After Poland, 5,000 people. You mean countries can't take 5,000 people? This is the problem, that Orban has got razor wire across his country. And see, here's the neat thing about what I find the telling thing in all this for Hungary. In these figures they're giving us, all the way down to Malta, 71 people of these refugees. Cyprus, 147. Estonia, 199. Luxembourg, 237. Latvia, 281. Slovenia, 337. Lithuania, 416. Croatia, 568. Slovakia, 802. Not a single refugee is slated to go to Hungary. I mean, and with the ones around them, Croatia, for instance, 568, Slovakia, 800. How many refugees is Orban worried about? They really only want to pass through his country. You'd think the mother son of a gun could think of how to make a few bucks off of it by providing a service and shuttling them across his country to where are you guys heading? Austria? Here's the bus to Austria. We got a special price for you refugees. Comes with a bottle of water and a can of food. Let's get you on that bus. I mean, how many of them even want to stay in Hungary? Why is he the one that's so anti immigration, when for all intents and purposes, his country doesn't face much impact, it would seem. In fact, almost none at all. And he uses this absurd line, quoting Orban, "We think all countries have a right to decide whether they want to have a large number of Muslims in their countries. If they want to live together with them, they can. We don't want to, and I think we have the right to decide that we don't want a large number of Muslim people in our country." I wonder if that means that if Hungarians decided to convert to Islam, they would have to leave Hungary. I mean, this is someone that represents democracy or anything, or even higher thinking. I mean, this isn't the most barbaric form of ridiculous expression of politics that I've ever heard in my life. A man that isn't even facing 100 refugees slated to come into his country. The refugees apparently don't want nothing to do with Hungary except to cross it. And this guy's worried about Muslims living in his country. So, yeah, it's so I think the deeper picture is they're using Orban to look like an idiot because they know the refugees don't want to stay in Hungary. So why make Hungary, a facilitator, as they should be? Why make Hungary a nice guy going, yeah, okay, you guys, let's, we're a buffer zone for you, obviously, as long as you're not hurting our country. I mean, those of you with money, hey, let's set up some stuff you can buy. Let's find out who's got money to pay for a train ticket. Let's sell you a train ticket to Austria. The rest of you that need assistance, let's just help you get on to another one of your countries of destination. Because we don't really want you in our country. And since you don't really want to be here, everything is fine. So, of course, they don't want Hungary being a facilitator and showing how easy it would be to help the refugees on their way, and how even if you do, it's not going to amount to millions of Muslims taking over Europe ever. So these are just things to sell newspapers today, and you notice that tomorrow those headlines aren't scaring you with that, are they? All of a sudden it's not about millions of Muslims taking over Europe. That was just to scare you, to get you to buy today's paper, so today they can tell you the solution they have. Orban put up razor wire on his country's border, and now the EU's telling him you got to take it down. $80 million, this article says. $80 million, and they're not a rich country. They're people, like so many countries that struggle, they could use that money. There's a lot of social programs, infrastructure, many things that money could be used for, instead of putting up a razor wire fence that now, being part of the EU, they're going to be ordered to take it down. And he's already said, if they tell me to comply, I have to comply. But I don't want to do it. I don't want them in my country. And so I just find all of this to be part of the drama, because nobody could be that stupid, really. Nobody could be that stupid as to say those things and think that they're any kind of a political leader in the world, when his own country marched against him a few years ago to say, you dictator, right? To call him dictator. Tens of thousands marched in the city, okay? So I don't think he's so popular. It looks like he's one of the bankers' boys. The first thing he did was centralize the media and such, so they can control everything, keep all the money in-house. Just like everybody, just like you do when you get a good democratic system. That's why bankers love free elections. Oh boy, do they love free elections. Oh, they love when people feel good about freely electing the tyrants that will then steal everything on behalf of the bankers, with smiles and suits and looking so respectable, until they say this kind of garbage out of their face, like this idiot in Hungary that is talking about, we don't want, if you want to live with Muslims, go ahead, but we don't want them in our country. Well, so what kind of country are you saying you have there? Orban? Are you a Nazi closed society? Is that what your citizens are supposed to feel like? White pride? Christian pride? You don't even know your history? That in the Quran it says that the Christians will be the closest to the Muslims in the end? I mean, do you not even know your Christian or your Muslim history, that you talk like a fool to the world? So I figure that's got to be, on purpose. They're playing him that way. They're playing Hungary that way, so that Hungary can be the bad guy to Germany's good guy, or possibly even to punish Hungary for kicking out the IMF. Now, here's an article, also from this, I guess, French press, through Yahoo. Syrian transition could include Assad, Turkey's Erdogan. So Turkey, who's been completely, well, first he was no problem with Assad. Then once he became, in the pocket of the UN the last couple of years, now Assad's got to go. And I mean, he's been one of the most vehement. Assad absolutely has to go. And now they're telling him back off, and he's saying, well, okay, we can talk to Assad. He's saying nobody envisages a future with Assad in Syria, saying it was impossible for them, Syrians, to accept a dictator who has led to the deaths of up to 350,000 people. So it was 240,000 in the war in the other article. Now it's 350,000. I don't know when he killed the other 100,000. I guess we just, that's all he's been doing since he's been in there. We just decided to get mad the last couple of years. So anyway, it just shows the way these people are having their strings pulled, because Turkey was always fine with Syria, fine with Assad. And all of a sudden now, he's been one of the, he's ready to go attack Assad as of the last year or two. And then now he's backing off a little. I mean, it just shows how these people have it. They're told here's what we're going to do. That's why you're a president. You're not the president because you have the power. You're the president because you look good on TV telling the people the garbage that we're going to tell them. And that's really how it comes down. And the last article that I have here is from this Business Insider, which seems to come up a bunch these days. I guess it's a popular mouthpiece. And the title, this is from yesterday, Saturday. ISIS makes sure to avoid one apocalyptic prophecy about the Antichrist. So, and it points out that, of course, in their prophecy, where the Antichrist comes from, and it happens to be, right where ISIS forces are. And they go on here. This is one of the things I want to end with today. This person who writes the article, or is quoting someone, Will McCants, director of the Project on U.S. Relations with the Islamic World at the Brookings Institute. Okay, now, remember, as I've said before, you don't get to have a title like that unless you are talking pure propaganda. So let's say with this wonderfully intelligent and informed person who's the director of the Project on U.S. Relations with the Islamic World. Okay, what does he say? Well, here's a quote from him. The Quran portrays Jesus as a messenger of God and his followers as those, quote, nearest in love to the believers. Something I was just quoting, that's right. The Christians in the end, this will be in the end times, the Quran says that the people who will be nearest in love to you will call themselves Christians. But they'll be of a certain type. He doesn't get into any of the reality of this. However, the Quran doesn't portray Jesus as a messenger of God. That's wrong. The Quran portrays Jesus as one of the most important prophets, like Moses, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, David, Solomon, Jesus. They're all mentioned in that frame of reference. And why? Because what the Quran understands is Jesus is the true Messiah of the Jews, and they killed him, and he's going to come again, and he's going to rule the world. See, this guy who's the director of U.S. relations with Islamic world doesn't seem to know that about the Islamic scripture, but instead twists it for us to imagine that he's giving us the Quranic vision of Jesus when this is not even accurate at all, and it's just enough to throw us off the scent of what the Quran really says about Jesus. So who is this guy that's the director, and he's the one giving us the information now about how the Quran relates to this Islamic? See, because again, who is ISIS but CIA? And who is this guy speaking to us but, more of that same arm, intelligence industry, telling us what we're supposed to know. And so what we're supposed to know is that all of this eschatological view is playing into things. I mean, I think that's the point of these articles, why they even use the word Antichrist. And they know all the Christians out there are screaming, end of the world, Antichrist. And so they're playing off that contemporary mood to show that this is all religiously based. And again, I believe that that's all going to come to fruition in the way of scaring the heck out of all the Europeans, because they think, oh, this devil's religion who is ordered to go into the world and terrorize people for Muhammad, for Allah. And now, oh my gosh, look what they're doing. See, that's what I still say we have to watch for. The false flags must come, you guys. They must. They're setting up for all of that stuff. Otherwise, none of this has any bite, right? What's the use of threatening me that the refugee crisis is such a drama if nothing comes of it, right? At least not if you're going to try and push us to war now. See? I mean, what happened? 9/11 and boom, we are at war immediately. Easy. We change laws in our country, Patriot Act, all these things. Easy. Because there's all this hype. You got war. You're in the moment. And so I feel that all of this right now, they are creating the moment where we can, I don't want to say naturally, where we can organically feel like we're just drawn into this war for our own good. Nobody's going to say, oh, we have to go kill all the Muslims. Oh, we have to go kill all the tyrants. That's not what they're going to say, of course. We want civil war because that's going to eliminate so many of these people that will otherwise have to rule. No, that's not what they're going to say. But you can read it in what's going on. You can see how what they do tell you leaves out all the facts. It leaves out all the reality. It leaves out all the history. Nobody ever brings up 100 years ago. Nobody ever brings up the fact that the Arabs pointed out from the very beginning that these aren't Jews returning here. Even before they set up the state in 48. The Arab historians were saying, hey, the only reason we can't accept this is that these aren't Jews. The Jews went away black and now they're coming back white. These are not the Jews. So, that's been argued in that land from the very beginning. And yet it isn't part of the narrative today. Why not? Why is it irrelevant what's going on? Why is it irrelevant what Sheikh Imran Hossein is pointing out about the Sunni-Shia divide and the civil war that's being stimulated and the way that the Syria regime is the only thing standing between this festering Sunni-Shia civil war? Why is no one pointing out what kind of a horrible scene that's going to be? Because, see, this is the scene they're trying to create. That's why they didn't point out what the refugee crisis was going to look like. And I don't know if Sheikh Imran Hossein is correct, but he is now most recently on record pointing out that, as I've been saying, these first people that are leaving, these are the affluent people. These aren't the poor people escaping war, necessarily. These are the people escaping the future they see coming, people escaping economic struggle, like when NAFTA took over Mexico and all the Mexicans had to flee because they had no more work. NAFTA, screwed them out of millions of jobs, which was exactly what it was designed to do. And so they had to flee and go north, which was all part of the plan. It brought all this cheap labor into the factories in America, some of the same factories that took their jobs in Mexico. I mean, it's really a beautiful system for the guys that run it. And so what Sheikh Imran is pointing out is that a lot of this initial refugee crisis are people that are leaving a certain type of economic straits because of the economic crunch that comes at times like this. All of a sudden, money isn't flowing like it was, and so people are losing their businesses. People are, so they're seeking economic relief. Is his viewpoint. A lot of these first ones, and that's why Germany's saying, yeah, let them in. Just like the Mexicans coming to America. Cheap labor, you bet. We've been counting on you guys. We've been waiting for you guys. Come on in. We already have all the corporations. We know exactly who needs how many people. So what the Sheikh's saying is, you wait till the war really starts. You wait till the civil war really starts if you think you've got refugees now. Then you will see millions of people. And so perhaps that's what they're setting us up for. See? So that when that starts to happen, then they can have their false flag, and then all of a sudden we're going to start freaking out. Oh no, you got to turn these people away, right? When these will be the poor, starving, war-torn people that really do need help. These will be the ones that we really will turn away. Now that we're playing out the drama with all this this BS through these few thousands that are coming across on boats where they can pay, like $1,500 a person to get on one of these rafts to get to Greece or to Italy? I mean, that's a lot of money in their world. Okay, some of this, I've seen a little bit of evidence that some of these people are paying what to us would be equivalent of a year's salary, right? So what's that in our median income? $20,000, $30,000 for one ticket? So are these the poor people that you don't want in your country? Orban? These are the people you're worried about that paid $1,500 just to get to the shore? You're worried about them coming through your country? See, that's why that's not true. That's all staged. It's all being staged. Because at some point, if the Sheikh is right, you are going to see them coming by the hundreds of thousands and maybe by the millions. And it's that point when Europe needs to lose its mind. It's that point when the false flags need to make them suddenly divided and in chaos over what to do. And then that way they can multiply that effect, and the chaos can really grow to where there's genuine animosity between people over just their opinion of this issue. Whatever people think about what we should do with the refugees, or if we should overthrow the regime, or if we should fight Russia, just to talk about these things will have everybody at each other's throats very soon. I think that's unfortunately what we have coming, Dad. So anyway, I hope this is helping, and I'll talk to you next week, Daddy-O.
Well, that was quite a great report, Tony. Thank you very much. And we thank you for listening. And we ask that you remember this ministry in your prayers. This keeps coming to you because of the contributions that you're making. The Lord has always taken care of this ministry for 30